All right. Hello, everybody. Oh my gosh, what a fun episode we are about to have. I am fascinated, perplexed, and just so curious to see what's going to come up in my conversation today with my guest today, Dana Kippel. I was just telling her I was trying to write a bio, so I'm going to read it, but I definitely want you to introduce yourself because there's a lot to you. And I didn't even get to the writer actor side of you, but I'm going to stick with this topic around your book, your plasma research and all that. So Dana is a researcher and author whose work explores plasma as both a scientific phenomenon and a spiritual force shaping consciousness and reality. She bridges science, spirituality, and human perception to invite people into a deeper inquiry about the nature of human existence. I mean, just simple little questions and topics, that you just...
I love it.
Everyone knows. No, I'm just kidding. So this is going to be amazing. And thank you for being here.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited.
Yes, me too. Me too. Okay. So I read this bio, which I feel like is a little bit lame, but I wanted to give people something. So, so I'd love to start by having you describe the work that you do and what led you to doing this work.
Sure. Oh my gosh, a loaded question. So yes, I feel like for the first time, in my life, I'm finally following, I guess, one of my destinies that I kind of refused the call to for a lot of years because it felt so novelty and weird and non-mainstream. And at first that scared me, as it scares most people when they awaken to what they maybe really are supposed to do versus what their ego wants to do. And I love that I fell into the field that I'm about to talk about because I just think this is really important to share. When we have a dream for ourselves from our ego and we have it envisioned exactly how it's going to go, and then we strain to make it happen, I feel like that is a cause of suffering in a lot of our lives, like mine. And then I had this thing that found me, and I finally kind of surrendered to it. And every day is a mystery. And I feel like now I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. I'm happy that I surrendered to this path. So I started meditating a few years ago, and a few meditations when I really connected to my body, it's like all of a sudden I knew all of this stuff, like a gnosis or wisdom about plasma, the fourth state of matter. And it was like almost like anthropomorphized as like a woman or like a being, a neutral being even talking to me. And I knew that it was intelligent. I knew it was the vehicle for consciousness. My higher self kind of came in, or this me in the future, and was like, you're going to write a book called A New Force. It's going to be, one of the books on plasma. And I'll say it's going to help kind of shift the paradigm we're in, is what I was kind of told. And so my theory is kind of that plasma, the fourth state of matter, which is an ionized gas in science, very simple but complex term that I'm happy to get more into, that there is a finer plasma that is more like a living ether that our scientific tools cannot test yet, but it is definitely out there. And it is the substance / field that creates reality along with our consciousness. So it is not conscious, but it works with our consciousness and our higher self consciousness. You could picture it kind of between us and our higher selves as like this intelligent clay to create reality. So there's ways we could study plasma dynamics in science and how it works with electromagnetic fields and apply that to how this higher realm, or maybe fourth and fifth dimensional realm, as a perspective, not in mathematics, works with plasma and consciousness together to create reality. So that's like the basis of my study. I will define it. The expanded definition of plasma is it is a multidimensional, sentient, not conscious, living ether that is the vehicle for consciousness, intelligence, and information. Intelligence is free will. Information is more like imprinted consciousness, which is not free will, but more kind of stuck on loops like belief systems and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So question for you. You were doing a completely sober meditation, and all of this just came to you like a download.
I cannot put it into words, and it frustrates me because I feel like download is the most human word we could use, right? Mm-hmm. But the best way to explain, I'm probably repeating myself, is like my higher self and then the energy of plasma fused together. And all of a sudden, it's just like my brain was connected to that. Almost like how we kind of know how to speak English and we don't remember learning to speak English.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like I just speak plasma. And I don't know why. I can't prove it right away, at least, but it's just there. and I'm just expressing it. And I feel like I have to. And anytime I tried not to in the beginning, it kept knocking at my door. Like some ideas, when you don't grab onto them, find other people. This one really, for some reason, was like, we're coming through you.
So you're not exactly sure why, but was this, I mean, because the extent of time I've spent in my life thinking about plasma is when I first heard of plasma TVs, and that's it. Like that
I
was a long
never,
time ago.
yeah, I never thought about plasma. I didn't even know what plasma was. The extent of mine was I would go to this party store called Spencer's and be mischievous and look at all the adult things there. And I'll always at the back of the store, there was this plasma ball. I didn't even know it was plasma though, but I was always enamored with it, and like neon lights, which is also plasma. But that was the extent of me knowing about plasma.
Wow. And then do you have like a science background as well? Because you have all the language and the terminology.
Yeah, I don't, but this is why I think it was like this specific perspective was meant to come through me, because I had a propensity for math and science as a child. I would say I was gifted in it, but unfortunately I developed like a drug and alcohol addiction, so I never went to college. But I think that was a gift because I was able to study it on my own now in my 30s. Once I kind of got this information, I was like, okay, let me, reconnect with my science and math background. That's the language, again, I understand really easily, but I'm able to look at it from a novelty perspective that you can't learn in school. So I think it actually helps me think differently, which I like.
Yeah. And the idea that you shared, I've had this conversation with other people on the show, and there's a whole, I don't know if you've listened to the telepathy tapes as well, but there's an episode in season 2 where they're talking to different artists, and they talk about that as well, where these ideas are just out there waiting for someone to take them. And if you don't, then, it eventually moves on to find somebody else, which I think is fascinating for musicians and just everyone. I love that idea. I'm like wondering if you'll ever, I mean, you have a little bit of insight, but I'm wondering if your insight will ever deepen around why you were the chosen one to receive this information.
Oh gosh. And by the way, the book about the ideas was Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, I think it's called. That's where I got that whole idea. It's come from places thing. I think, right, we're all the chosen ones with our own destiny, right? But I think for me, why this specific thing is coming through me, and it's coming through other people and their own perspectives, plasma's catching on, right? I think it was my background in math and science. It was my background in having to be authentic. Just like I was bullied so much as a kid, and just realizing that no matter what I did, I couldn't please people. And I was just going to be myself, because either way, people were projecting hate or love onto me. I used to describe myself as a ghost. I felt like a ghost because people either would come to me to feel inspired or to grieve, but I felt like I wasn't like a real person. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know why I just mentioned that either, but now I feel human. I've done a lot of therapy, but yeah, I think my work, a lot of like my trauma that I went through and how much I've worked on my mental health and integration and grounding. Like, I feel like if I didn't do that and I got this information, I would have totally spiritual bypassed it, if that makes sense. So I think, my unique background with mental health and science and spirituality and math and being whimsical and absurdity, like just all these things of who I am, I feel like plasma is kind of using me as a filter to be like, well, whatever I say, I don't even know, but it just feels like I'm the perfect radio for its message, at least to a certain group of people, and then there's other people like Robert Temple, who's like a plasma genius. He speaks to another demographic, a little bit more maybe science-based. A lot of men love him because he explains like a lot of the particulars of plasma. I love him too, actually, because he feeds into my logical brain, but he also is very metaphysical, actually. And I love Robert Temple, but yeah.
Okay, so interesting. So when this happened to you and you received all this information, you were already spiritually open, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So where were you in your own spiritual journey at that point?
Yeah, it was just actually starting. I was very open. So it's funny. I've never had like a dogma growing up, I guess. Like, yes, my parents were Jewish, but I was adopted and my birth mom I knew celebrated Christmas. So I never really was even attached to any holiday. I was always kind of just thinking for myself. I even wrote that on a school project. Like, I'm Dana and I'm special because I think for myself. Well, this information found me and I found it at the same time, kind of. I didn't have any kind of dogma or belief system, which is why I was able able to kind of channel it neutrally, I think. But where I was at spiritually was I was always interested in the paranormal. I always knew there was more than this reality. I was always connected with other kind of, interdimensional aliens, spirits, just everything that's out there. We don't even need to categorize it. When I read science books, I don't read it to learn. I read it to see like what I can change about it or what I think is wrong with it. I would call myself at the time not spiritual, but maybe like a truth seeker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a spiritual skeptic.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. So, okay, so you get all of this information. Was there any part of you that questioned it? Were you like, I'm going crazy or this doesn't make any sense? Yeah. Tell me about that process and then like how it evolved into you actually trusting what you received.
Yeah, I'm still learning to trust it every day because it feels almost like dreamlike when I connect with the information. And when I'm connected, it feels so real and everything lines up and I'm in a flow state and it makes sense. And then when I kind of fall out of it, like after I'm done, let's say writing something about it, I guess I hate the word channeling, but almost when I am in that flow state talking about it, and then I'm back to normal Dana, I guess it feels like I was just in a dream and I'm like, wait, did that just happen? Is this real information? Like and I think it's good to question everything and have discernment. But when it first happened, I will say at first, the moment it happened, that day it happened, I didn't question any of it. I was more in like just such connection with it. And I just knew it. It was so strong and it just felt true. And I would say that I was on that wavelength for a few months. And then it slowly started to disintegrate as I started to tell people about it. And they were like, what? And this is 5 years ago. No one cared about plasma. And they were like, okay, Dana, like everyone would just laugh at me. And then I started to doubt myself. And then about a year, I would say 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to post on TikTok about this stuff. Like not Instagram yet, because I don't want people to find me out right in Hollywood because I was acting and a filmmaker. But TikTok, I'll make a new one. No one follows me. Let me just test it out. And I started talking about it and started speaking to people. And that set alarm bells in my head that I was like, okay, maybe other people are connecting with this. Like maybe I'm not as crazy as I thought. And then my dad passed away last year. When that happened, I was like, okay, I'm going to post on Instagram. I'm going to write this book that I knew I was supposed to write the last 5 years. I could die tomorrow. I'm going to stop like bullshitting myself. I need to really, lock into what I know in my heart I meant to do kind of thing. And then I just started to trust it more and more as more compounding evidence grew, as people connected with it, as I connected more with it. Because I hate to go on a tangent, but it's kind of like the book, The Dark Materials. The main character in that, I don't even remember her name, but it's this little girl and she starts connecting with this thing called dust through an althiometer that connects through symbols. It's like this conscious dust. And then she goes through this dark night of the soul where she gets too logical about it and doesn't know how to connect with it anymore. And then she finally at the end integrates, and I don't even think she uses the althiometer anymore, but she learns to connect with it in a new way, in a more integrated way, where it's not just about, I don't think it's just about like symbols, but she connects with it in a way where it's more like she went through all this separation from it, and that actually strengthened her consciousness. So she had more logic to integrate that kind of spiritual information, if that makes sense. And I feel like that happened to me. So for a while, I felt very disconnected from my own information. And I feel like only in the last year have I felt very integrated with it. And now I just know it's true. Like to me, it's fact, even though I do question it sometimes, like I know it is. So yeah, I'll stop there on my tangent, but hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. And so when you're receiving the information, and maybe it changes over time, but like this is obviously very complex and abstract information. So during the first reception of it, or maybe throughout, like, do you have a hard time remembering it as it comes through, or it's just there?
Always there. I can tell because I start speaking fast when I get interviewed about it or talk about it. And that's how I know it's like it wants to come out so fast. Because I normally, when people meet me in person, they're like, you're way more monotone than I thought, because I'm like this about plasma. And then when I'm normal Dana, I'm more just like, I don't talk as fast, I guess. But yeah, it's just always right there. And if I try too hard to impress someone or like get too logical, it's almost like my connection is cut off to it. So I just have to be open to whatever's coming through.
And is it
Yeah.
something that just kind of comes whenever it wants to come, or is it specifically in meditation? How is it working for you now?
It comes whenever it wants. It came whenever it wanted to come at first. And then I also noticed that I could set up times for it to come. So, like when I was writing my book, the hardest part was sitting down to actually write it. Writing it was easy because it would just come on through. But I noticed when I would sit down every day, it just kind of came like clockwork, if that makes sense. Like I didn't even have to think about it. But then in the past, there was times where it came to me where I was trying to like watch a freaking movie, and this honestly still happens. So I can't even say that figure this out. But yeah, I'll be watching a movie because I'm relaxed, or I'll be in the shower just trying to have no mental space. And it all comes because when that's me in a receptive mode, when you're open and you're in a state of play and you're present and you're relaxed, that's when it comes. So sometimes I have to try to set a boundary to be like, this is great, but I'm not a martyr. I'm not trying to save the world every second. I also have to be Dana and live Dana's life. And like, I can enjoy a movie without having to think about plasma for an hour. And that's a hard balance for me. And I think for a lot of creatives, but for me, it's very important to kind of live in Dana land, and they do intersect. But I also think it's very important to not have plasma time and have reality TV time, eat a brownie time, go to amusement park and hang out with friends time, like human time.
Yeah, for sure. And I've talked to a lot of people who channel and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And what a lot of them say is like when it all first came online, it was like sudden, loud, and all the time. So, yeah,
Mm.
your experience sounds familiar for other people who kind of, I know you don't like the word channel, but who receive
Oh,
information in
yeah.
that way. Yeah. Okay. So, I want to get into some of like the spiritual components of plasma. So, in your
Hmm.
book, you say that plasma is spiritual and that it's truth. Can you explain
Hmm.
what you mean by that?
Yeah, there's a really good quote. I think it is from a science fiction book called The Parable of the Sower or Sower. Can never pronounce it. And it says God is change. And I also think that truth is change. And I think plasma is change, but plasma is not God. So it's a very paradoxical thing I just said. But I'm not even going to explain that. I'm just going to let that settle in people's minds. But truth is change because you can think something is true today and it is true. And then tomorrow, something completely new is true. Truth is perspective, and perspective always changes. Truth is always growing. Plasma is in synergy with our consciousness. So as we evolve as a human race, as individuals, plasma evolves and God also evolves. It's almost like a holy trinity, like a mother plasma, father God or consciousness, and then a child is like humanity. But it's all feedbacking with each other. And as consciousness evolves and grows, plasma reflects that. And plasma also grows. It's imprinted into it. So it's kind of like this trinity feedback loop. Yeah. Plasma conscious synergy can happen on many levels. Basically, it's the ways that plasma and consciousness interact on an individual level, on a collective level, on maybe a larger than a collective level. For instance, there's individual plasma consciousness synergy where I'm connected to this water bottle. That's the type of plasma consciousness synergy where this is not as conscious as a human, but it has imprinted consciousness on it. I can get information from this water bottle and who's touched it if I'm open enough to it, if that makes sense. There's plasma consciousness synergy where I am communicating with a interdimensional plasma being, and that is a type of plasma consciousness synergy where my consciousness is communicating with their plasma field. And then there's plasma consciousness synergy that, creates space time. So the collective unconscious, like Carl Jung would say, to me, it's this fourth dimensional space where all our consciousness kind of imprints together, memories and belief systems, stories. It's the realm of archetypes. It's the realm of memory. Time is backwards and forwards there. It's more circular. And I believe that that plasma consciousness synergy actually creates space time. So I believe that space time is emergent and the laws of reality can be changed as we change, which I think is why we actually always constantly discover new things. It's not because we're discovering new things, it's because the reality is alive and evolving, and we're discovering as it evolves, which if you look over time makes complete sense. That's why it's kind of like a flower of life that we're all in. Plasma consciousness synergy is the dynamic interplay between plasma and consciousness that creates emergent outcomes. So that's a very big thing I missed. When plasma and consciousness synergy work together, almost as like an infinity loop, Something comes out of the center of it, emergent outcomes. There's always a gestalt. And what a gestalt is it's something greater than the sum of its parts. So when plasma and consciousness work together on many different levels, always what comes out of it is something greater than what the other two are, which you could call God energy, you could call creative energy, but there's just this ineffable thing that always comes out of interaction. You can even call it dark energy because it expands the universe, in my opinion. But there's just this thing, this third thing that comes out of the interaction of those two things. A really interesting way to also think about plasma consciousness synergy is we are surrounded by our biofield or an aura. That's almost like scientifically proven now, I even think. It's like a toroidal shape of plasma, of fourth dimensional bioplasma that we can't see with the naked eye, but that's why you can like kind of feel someone's vibe. In my framework, that is made of a fourth dimensional plasma. Same thing as the collective unconscious. So what does it hold? Our memories, imprinted consciousness, right? Our consciousness kind of goes along the outside of it, the torus, and then filters back into us. So if you picture your consciousness, it's almost like a system of plasma consciousness synergy where we're feedbacking with our inner plasma and the outer plasma or outer reality. And when two toruses or two plasma bubbles, I call them, meet, like me and you, our consciousness synergizes and a third thing emerges. And that third thing reflects everyone else's consciousness. So when someone listens, two people can listen to this and get something completely different because it's reflecting different to everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate you explaining everything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a more of a history and literature person.
Oh, cool.
So this is all like very, very interesting and complex for me. And definitely a lot of it's like new language as well.
Yeah.
So no, and I think it will be for a lot of people, but that's part of what makes it so fascinating. So you actually said something earlier that I knew I had in my notes a little bit later that I want to kind of circle back to. So the question I had written for you about this, how does plasma help us connect with otherworldly beings? And what would that experience be like? And then early in our conversation, you said you've always been connected to otherworldly beings. So I'd love to hear about kind of your personal experience and then how it helps and then what that experience would be like for someone else.
Yeah. Okay. So first, my experience, I guess, when I was younger, I had more negative experiences because I was also, and this will connect to plasma, I was dealing with a lot of trauma in my life. You know, I was taken advantage of as a child in horrible ways by a few different people. I had a lot of violence at home. The problem is when these beings visit you, everything you asked, they are every being of consciousness that visits us in a layer of plasma. And you can think about it very easily because just like we have a biofield, right, of plasma that reflects, plasma is a reflective substance on one level. So it reflects my subconscious. So when I'm talking to you, if I'm looking at a survival state of consciousness, things I might remember in someone that reminds me of you. So I might judge you, right? Most of us judge each other because the person is more reflections of our internal states, if that makes sense. When a being visits me, they have that same plasma layer around them. And they are reflecting my subconscious. So if I'm in a state of fear, and this is why in the Bible and a lot of religions, angels say, do not fear. If I'm in a state of fear and this consciousness is visiting me, I'm going to see a demon or a witch lady or something very scary because it's going to mirror that to me. Even though the actual substance is always everything that visits us is trying to evolve us or for us to experience or like learn from. But this plasma layer on the outside, it's all to help our psyche to evolve and experience. So they come in negative, positive, and neutral. There are informational beings. Those are beings that hold memories of trauma. So they may come in like a demon or a monster or cryptoid, something very scary or cryptid, or even like a gray alien. And then there are intelligent beings, which are more fifth dimensional beings. So those are like our higher selves. Those are maybe, beings from other worlds who are benevolent. I don't know. They all come through this fourth dimensional layer that is colored by archetypes and by the things in our culture, like monsters, angels, dakinis, witches, cryptids, grays, anything you could think of in a fantasy realm. It's almost like that is their costume. So anything that visits us is what I'm trying to say will reflect our subconscious. So when I was going through trauma, I was always having negative experiences. Those same beings who are still with me today, then I had a a period of time where I was seeing them as more angelic because I was more in like a spiritual phase where everything was love and I put them on a pedestal. Then finally, I was able to kind of integrate and really heal my trauma. And now when they come to me, I see them what I call their true form. They're holographic beings or light beings, or they might still come to me in something kind of maybe scary or something, brighter, depending on what is visiting me, whether it's like an informational being holding like some trauma I need to work on or a memory, or whether it's a being coming to me with like ideas or information from this like higher fifth dimensional realm, right? But whatever comes to me, I feel like I can at least see the truth of it now. I feel like when people have an understanding of plasma and how it works, it takes the power back to you because you're not thinking that you're getting haunted. These things are all holding things for your evolution, and you have the power to co-create a positive experience or a negative experience. So I feel like once you know that about plasma and how it kind of works with the dynamics of consciousness and how on one layer plasma can reflect your subconscious, and then on a deeper layer it reflects truth, like whatever is true for you and that being, if that makes sense. Once again, I know it's very complex. You can at least feel like you have agency over the experiences spiritually that are happening to you, because a lot of people are stuck in a victim state with these experiences, and it might trigger people, especially what I'm saying. And I've been there, but I've also been on the other side of it. And there's a reason that there's very spiritual people out there who never have these negative, I wouldn't call them, we all can have experiences that can kind of scare us, but they're not plagued by negative experiences. And that's because they know that they're co-creating all these experiences. They know that they're not being haunted by these scary, evil things. And when we get into that narrative, it just takes us away from really facing ourselves and the deeper issues we carry. Yeah.
This is so far my most interesting, most interested in this part of the conversation. And I always love to hear like more about what these types of interactions are. So do you have a word or language for these beings that other people use? Like, is it spirit guides, like angels? Like, what do you think these beings are?
Yeah. I mean, the best way to describe it, there's so many levels I don't think it's like conceptualized in a human way, but so I could just try to they're not meant to be technically put in categories. I feel like we have to, right? Because we're human, to be categorized stuff. So our future ancestors, I call them, they're more what I call fifth dimensional beings. And when I talk about dimensions, I talk about dimensions are a perspective. The fourth dimensional perspective is a dimension that is in time, but it is circular time, backwards and forwards time. It's, the Akashic field. It's where the archetypes are and the information that is imprinted by consciousness. So that's why like ancestral memory is there and, past, present, future timelines. And then fifth dimensional is outside of time completely. Those are like the realm of God or heaven or our higher selves as like an expanded collective. I call them our future ancestors. They kind of hold ideas and intelligence. And I don't think they actually give us ideas. I think we co-create ideas with them. So, and it's like my expanded consciousness, your expanded consciousness, we're all up there. So yeah, I call those fifth dimensional beings our future ancestors. I also think this fifth dimensional space is almost kind of like a landing pad to experience like other worlds and realities beyond time, if that makes sense. They're all benevolent because to exist in that realm, you're intelligent and there's a benevolence, almost like it's like made of love. I don't know how to explain it. And then there is this fourth dimensional realm or existence between us and them, more circular time. And this is where people can astral project. This is where a level of consciousness, like a ghost can be your loved one who has passed, like before they go to their higher selves. The thing is, we're at all places at once. This is why we're multidimensional. Part of you is here, part of you is already there, and part of you is already in the fifth dimensional space. This is, I think, where people see gray aliens, that they're from this fourth dimensional space. One really important thing to know is in this fourth dimensional informational space, whatever being visits you, they're always covered in it. Because think about it, if they're coming from this fifth dimensional space, we'll just be linear for a second, they're coming through the fourth dimensional space to come to you. So they're all going to have this like cloak, fourth dimensional cloak. So they'll always come in something painted from the fourth dimension, unless you're having a crazy spiritual experience where you're seeing like the truth of them and they come to you as like this light being or holographic. And I've had that happen a few times. In this fourth dimensional space, they're beings who I don't say have free will. They just are more on like a time loop or like they're tape recorded. I don't even know how to explain it. It's not that they're not real. They just don't have free will like these fifth dimensional beings. So they're like imprints of our ancestors in memory, or imprints of our trauma. They could even be like imprints of us from other timelines, giving information to us.
Well, okay, here's a question. And thank you for explaining all of that. This is a lot of complex thought process to like keep straight in your head. So you're doing
Yeah.
you're doing a great job. So when you interact and when you see these beings, is it like in your mind's eye? Is it in the room with you? I'm curious how that feels.
Yeah. I guess you could say in your mind's eye. It's just like, it's one of those thoughts again where it's like a gnosis feeling, like I just know it, if that makes sense. But I am also envisioning it. And then there will be some times where they are in front of me in my reality with me, the holographic little mist beings that feel like my family, like these more fifth dimensional beings. They kind of feel more like feelings. Like there's not much words there when they visit me. It's more like, they feel like my future ancestors. They feel like my family. Like I could cry when they visit because they just feel like warmth, right? Like a part of me. And they just like floated to me. I was in the Monroe Institute one of the times and I was in this thing called a check unit, which has like, it's just your bed in complete darkness. And they're just floating towards me and lay on the pillow next to me. And we just were there. It was just like an experience of just beingness. And then I've had experiences, with scarier stuff where mostly when I was younger or during sleep paralysis, where there's, shadows in the room with me or this weird demonic creature was like floating like across the bed. And I will say, even though it's physically there, it's more in a dream like subtle energy state. So it is physically there, but it's not as like real as my skin is. It's more looks like a projection or a hologram, if that makes sense. And then like when I was in Nashville a few months ago, I had an experience, and this is why I feel like it's so hard to categorize. And it's not, I will tell you what's coming through to me actually is it's not even about the categorization of any of these things. It's more about the meaning we make from each encounter and knowing that we have the power to co-create these experiences and that they're all for our greatest evolution and experience and learning. So when we don't victimize ourselves and like learn what we can learn from each experience, that is very important. And it's also important to know you can set boundaries. If you don't want to be visited by something, you can literally just set that energetic boundary and like stand in your power with that. This is something that you don't have to enter into. And if you feel like it's happening to you and you feel like you can't control it, then that's something you really need to work out in therapy and psychologically, because if it keeps coming to you, chances are it's like a traumatic memory encased in these traumatic things you are seeing or scary beings you are seeing, and it's something you are not facing that is desperately calling for your attention. Kind of remember I was in a tiny home and I was outside and I was just looking, and I kind of softened my gaze as an experiment. I was looking out at the hills, and these like tall blue aliens, I just like materialized in front of me. And talking about this, I sound crazy, and I was not on drugs. I wouldn't believe anyone who told me this, by the way. No one needs to believe this. But yeah, there was just this like, it was like a frozen image of a tall blue alien, and then more of them appeared, and they were like standing against a fence, and there was information in the image for me, but like they weren't moving, but I was hearing telepathic stuff, and I can't even tell you what I heard. I like do not remember, and I cannot find where I wrote it down. Like there's just all these experiences, but what really matters is the meaning we create from them. It relates to us. And then what matters even more than that is how we take it into the world and make different choices and actions based on what we're learning. Because if we're not integrating it into reality, if we're not using it to grow our psyche and consciousness and make different choices, if we're not using these ideas we're getting and applying them to real life, then we're just living in a fantasy land or Maya or the realm of illusion. Then like, what is the point? Like we're in this tangible reality to make a difference. So if we're not going to integrate these experiences, we're just escaping ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So, question about this. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, it seems like you think that these are benevolent beings. Like, maybe things are not ever evil. It's all a reflection of our subconscious. It's there to help us learn and grow and co-create. Is that accurate?
Yes and no. I will say there is good and evil, and then there is like non-duality, neutrality, right? And in a base level, these are all neutral experiences. We're creating the meaning from them. Evil and good to me is human created. It is very real. Evil to me is more fear-based, and good is more you putting stuff maybe on a pedestal. And then there is the neutrality under that. And I think we're allowed to have all those experiences. And, I'll say I've had very scary experiences that have definitely felt evil, especially when I was younger. I would say what's realer than that is the neutral experiences and creating what you want from that. There are also, things that can come to you that are dark and what some would call evil, that maybe, you feel like someone, has sent you bad energy, or you're just coming across a person who has really bad energy, or it's a very unsettling presence around you. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. My point is, I 100% believe you could set boundaries around it if it's not connected to you, if it's being like sent to you. And I think if it's still coming to you a lot, whatever's coming to you, whether it's a person in real life or in the spirit world, real life is perfect training for the spirit world. It is resonating with something inside you. And that is not to shame people. That is to say, look within you and see what that darkness is that you're fearing in that thing or that person. And there's even a quote about that, like what you fear in others, like killing yourself or something. And I'm not saying to kill it. I'm saying to look at it, get curious about it, get therapy for it, and that will disappear in your outer projection once you heal it in yourself. And I'm saying that because it has happened in my life. And if it's showing up again, then there's a deeper level to heal. And that's just life. We're never healed, and we don't need to be obsessed with healing all the time. I think what we should be obsessed about is just being ourselves and being authentic, and know that we're healing every moment of every day, but we don't need to like obsess about it either.
Yeah, that's helpful. So for people
Yeah.
like me who, I've been on a
Mhm.
spiritual journey for a long time. I work
Yeah.
with a mentor. I've actually worked with a lot of people. And so I've never encountered beings of any kind. I believe that
Mhm.
they exist, but I've
Yeah.
never had any of the experiences even close to what
Yeah.
you're describing, which I think is probably more of the norm. So
Mhm.
is everyone having these interactions, whether we know it or not? And I don't know
Yeah.
if it's useful for people like me to try to
Yeah.
recognize it, but yeah, talk to me, the average person.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's good you mentioned that, because to me, it's so average.
Mhm.
So, everyone who dreams is seeing these archetypal beings in their dreams sometimes. And if you write your dreams more, you'll remember more of your dreams. And if someone can't remember their dreams, to me, that kind of signifies that there's a lot of stuff under the surface with childhood and trauma that you need to look at. Because a lot of the times our visions are cut off when we don't want to remember things from our past. So there's a huge sink there with, cutting off our own intuition because it was unsafe to have that intuition as a child. I've seen that with so many people, because literally a lot of us have been through traumas. It's just how reality works. And then people, the average person who maybe is not just seeing holographic beings in their bed, or like, a alien visiting them or whatever. I think anyone can have these experiences if you're interested and want to call that in visually. The simplest thing you have to do, just remember, reality is our intelligent clay and we can play with it, is set an intention. Hey, I would like to have a visual experience that is a positive one, or that I can co-create. And then just set that intention and for a few weeks and see what happens. Don't force it, just like see what's there. And then that would be my place to start, I think. And also just when you're setting that intention, connecting with your heart energy, making sure that you're grounded. And then also understanding if it's not happening, maybe psychologically you're not ready yet. Like there was a long time where I did not have visual experiences. And I think I would have went crazy if I did, because I just had so much like psychological stuff I hadn't worked through that I think I would have probably ended up in like a psych ward, or I've not been able to integrate these experiences, which could be a big ontological shock for someone when you view these things and realize that reality is not what you think. So I think, there's a part of letting go and letting things happen. But, if you check in with your heart, if you feel ready, set the intention to maybe have one. Then there's something to be also said for like different sensory aspects that people have. So maybe someone's clairaudient and they have the same kind of feelings that I do from seeing something, hearing something. So I also have clairaudience. So sometimes I'll just, these beings will speak to me in my mind. I don't see them at all. You just start to feel the energy of what's what. It's really hard to explain, but over time you just do. It's just like, if you're hearing songs on the radio and you know who's singing what, not right away, but once you listen to all the singers a lot, you start to know who the singers are. There's clairaudience. Then there's something called, I think, clairsentience, which I have as well, where you just have a knowing. And that could be someone who doesn't have much of an imagination, because some people can't visualize. Like if I say apple, they can't visualize it. A lot of those people have clairsentience, or just a knowing, where you might just meet someone and you're like, yeah, I know I don't like them. And you don't know why, you just know. That's a knowing. And there's so many, I'm not like a professional in the clair, so I don't know all the names of them, but some people even that have it with touch. so they can like touch a sweatshirt and know that's like your grandpa George's sweatshirt. Like my main thing with what you're saying is everyone has paranormal gifts and magical gifts. It's just about discovering which one you have and also knowing that you can grow any of them because we're all a hologram. We all have everything inside of us. So it's really about, okay, what gift do you want? And set that intention and spend some time on it and it'll come.
Yeah, I think for some people, it probably sounds really scary. For me, not so much, but it's
Mhm.
just a good reminder to say, okay, I
Mhm.
have to be intentional about this. I do have to
Yeah.
create the time and space for this. I can't just set the intention and forget and like hope that
Yeah.
something shows up, right? So there's like a
Yeah.
consistency track. And so that's probably why, people recommend meditation for all different reasons, but I'm sure that
Mm.
it could be helpful for what we're talking about here too, for calling those experiences in.
Yes, I think Nikola Tesla said like when someone realizes it's all about energy, frequency, and vibration, like the world will change, whatever. I think what he meant by frequency actually is consistency. That's just my opinion. I think it was layered, but I think when we talk about energy and vibration, it's more the word. So you're setting the intention, like, okay, I want to have a visual experience with a benevolent being. And then the energy is more being receptive and open to what comes and just not being attached to it. And then the frequency would be every day, maybe you're stating that until it happens, but very subtly and lightly. Like when you're setting these intentions, it has to be almost from like a playful place. And it doesn't have to be through meditation from you. It could literally be that you don't need to know how it happens ever. All you need to do is set the intention, let it go, and let the mystery bring it back to you. So your consciousness is imprinting in a plasma. It's ordering to the universe like, what it wants. You're ordering the feeling of what you want. You're ordering formative markers on what you want. You want a visual experience. You want it to feel good. You can even be specific if you want, like you want a visual experience with like a being from the fifth dimension who maybe comes to you as an elephant. Like the more specific you are, it actually sometimes comes back that way and it's really weird, but you don't want to say how it'll happen ever. And if you think about it in your life, the best things that happen, you never plan how, they just kind of come in. And then plasma will connection to all these beings of consciousness, because plasma is kind of the cosmic mother of all of this, in some mysterious God energy way will kind of make the most perfect experience for your emotional growth because it's connected to you almost like as your mother and all your timeline selves, everything's connected to it, right? So it'll kind of gather all of this stuff and create this most beautiful, perfect experience for your growth at that very moment of your resonance and bring it to you in divine timing. So that's kind of how it works.
I love all of that. I feel like I need to listen to that little section several times. I think for me, that brings like hope and peace. So I love that.
Yeah.
Two other questions before you.
Mhm.
One, maybe not so fun. So your work
That's fine.
is not mainstream. I mean, people love you on social media, but do you find
Mhm.
that you're getting a lot
Mhm.
of backlash and like, how are you handling the skepticism of your work?
I actually thought I would get more backlash than I've gotten. So that's kind of refreshing, actually. But I do notice there's like a natural want to suppress me sometimes, especially with men, I find. Sorry, men, no offense. I love you guys. I'm not like a feminist or anything, but something about me, I feel like scares them sometimes. Like when I talk about feeling and emotion and how this connects to plasma, because they all want to know about like the technical side of plasma and like the alien side. And it's like, when I talk about plasma and Mary Magdalene and Anana, the goddess and the cosmic mother, and like how it all has to do with emotion and feeling, and all of them are talking about like being more detached. And I'm like, that's not it though. Maybe that is it, but this is also it. Like, I just notice like a natural kind of like, oh God, like kind of like a boyfriend, like you're too much, like an avoidance, like just a natural sphere. And that's the same thing that witches experience, why they were burned at the stake. It's almost like, and I will say it's not only men, but it's like as humanity and a lot of scientists, which do happen to be men, like we're scared of our emotions and feelings because when you connect with like the being of your soul and all your memories and your intuition, and as I said, a lot of us have closed ourselves off to protect ourselves in a good way, but that doesn't serve us now as adults. We did it as children because we were in periods of duress. But now most of us are not with our parents anymore. We're on our own and we don't need to survive. And a lot of us are stuck in survival mode. And I just find when I meet people, I trigger in them like this authenticity. I feel like I plant a seed in them and they realize they need to grow. And this has happened with boyfriends. And this has also happened just with anyone I come across. And if they're not ready to, they kind of fade out of my life. And it's sad because that can get very lonely. but it also is like, I think, a good thing to plant seeds. My point is, I have noticed pushback in the scientific community, but I will say they always come back around. I have not met a scientist yet who I have not been able to turn. But what I love about science is you cannot disprove what I'm saying. You can't prove it, but you can't disprove it. And that, I think, frustrates a lot of them. In science, there's always a new frontier. There's always more to explore. And the fact that there is a field, a finer field than, the plasma field that we know now, that is not out of scientific question. And we just haven't discovered it yet. What really makes them uncomfortable is that it's the vehicle for consciousness and that it brings consciousness back into the equation, a lot of the materialists. But I'm noticing a lot of scientists are going through these awakenings, and behind closed doors, they have a lot of paranormal experiences. And I've been in rooms where they've told me these things, and they're scared more of academia and the larger powers that be. They are scared to lose their jobs. But when the powers that be chill the fuck out and stop scaring everyone like a religion, almost like science is like a religion, when they calm down, these scientists will be able to come out more with this stuff. And I think this is shifting right now. And I think I'm at the perfect time where I'm hopefully inspiring other people with and without degrees to just be their like whimsical selves. They don't need to be poised to sound smart. You could sound however you want. Albert Einstein was so weird. Nikola Tesla was so weird. You don't have to sound like a genius. And everyone is so smart. And I feel like just more people that can express themselves and like the weird, unique ideas they have and don't have fear of like academic shutout, being, a lone wolf and being separated from their pack. Like you can't want to fit in and also change the world. And then the thing is, when eventually you do find your people anyway, and they're just all lone wolves, and you come together and you realize you're never alone. You just thought that you didn't deserve other people like you down at your core. You didn't think it existed because it didn't exist when you were a child. But the moment you give yourself permission and realize, no, like I deserve to be around reciprocal people like me who are weird, who love me, who give back, and I don't have to give, who understand me. There's plenty of us out there. We just all don't think we deserve each other. I have faced a lot of suppression and criticism, but I do feel like they always come around, which I feel very happy about. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who don't like me, but I'm a mirror. So that means they don't like themselves.
Yeah, that's always a good way to look at it. And there's always truth to that for sure. And, everything that's out there is weird and crazy until it's proven and it's normal. People thought the earth was flat and, all of those things that have been disproven since then. And I think we are at a time, which is kind of hard for me to believe because I have a hard time believing that I exist in any type of special time in history. But I feel like we are at a time where science and spirituality are merging. It's not just theory, but proven as well. So I think that's really exciting. And I do think you're at the right time for this. I think even 10 years ago, people would have been like, we don't know what she's talking about.
No, the perfect time. I think we're in a paradigm shift.
Yeah, it seems like there's just a lot of opening and awakening that's happening in the world today. So that's pretty cool. And I'm excited for you and everything else that you're going to uncover and put into the world to contribute to people's thought processes. The last question I have is, and this might be a big one, but if you had to distill everything that you've learned about plasma or really anything else about consciousness, the human experience, if you had to distill it into like one truth, what would it be?
Be yourself.
Okay. I love that. Yeah.
It's really that simple, and it's complex, and I could explain it for like the next hour, but I would say if I could break it down in like a sentence or two, what that encompasses, it's like really learn to love who you are and accept yourself. Really learn to be yourself, whether you're in office or walking down the street or in a new class or meeting a new lover. If you don't know what being yourself means, learn who you are and go back to your childhood and start there. When you really are being yourself and work on knowing yourself and you remember who you are and the expansiveness of you and the multidimensionality of you and the love and joy that you are, you might have to remind yourself that over again, but eventually it's just like you're like a joy bubble existing. And it doesn't mean people don't die. It doesn't mean bad things don't happen. It doesn't mean you won't get dumped. But you have such a grander perspective that all really is happening for your highest good. And I know that's so hard to hear. And if you told me that on a day I wasn't feeling good, I would tell you to fuck off. But I do understand that at like a cellular level so much. I just hope more people go on that journey of not spirituality or science, of just knowing who they are, because everything will flower out of that. And that's how we'll change our world.
Yeah, I love how you put that. I have been in that experience myself, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I've made a lot of progress over the years. I'm making rapid progress with it over the past year. So just
Yeah,
kind of
same.
watching it all play out in real time, I can definitely attest to what you're saying. And so that was
Mm-hmm.
I think, a beautiful way to close the conversation. Although I
Yeah.
asked you about a third of the questions that I had written, because no, it was just there. You clearly have so much to say about this. There's so many layers to it. There's depth of your knowledge, and I'm excited to just to keep learning from you. And I want to show people. I put this on my iPad on my Kindle because the
Oh,
book was
yes,
very
here I
big.
have
It
it
looked
too.
like. So, okay, perfect. So I've got your book here. It is A New
Yes.
Force, Plasma Consciousness, and
Yes.
the New Human Potential. So people can buy that on, well, I got the Kindle version on
Oh,
Amazon.
they
But
can get on
yeah,
Amazon.
yeah.
I have a few signed book lefts on my website. And then if this comes out in March, I teach magic classes, and I think I'll be teaching one on edge and hinge physics and how that has to do with the new sciences of higher consciousness. And I'll be teaching also one on flowing over fear, and why your state of fear, if you actually feel into that, you can get into a flow state. So it's kind of like hijacking fear, which a lot of us are dealing with fear right now. So yeah.
Absolutely. And where else can people find you? So social, get
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
information about you.
So my Instagram is at Dana.thealien. I think I'm on there the most. And then the link in my bio there, it's called a stand store, STAN store. That has all my important links, like my magic classes and my books. DanaKippel.com is where my signed books are, and just a little bit more about like where I'm speaking. I'll be speaking at the Science of Consciousness conference in April in Tucson. And then I'm speaking at another place in June. I'm blanking on the name, in Tennessee. My TikTok is at Dana Kippel. My YouTube is at Plasma Intelligence. And we'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Yes, definitely go give a follow if you're not already. Grab the book. And thank
Yes.
you so much again, Dana, for
Yes.
sharing all of this. I feel like this was as just as someone who's watched a lot of your content, was reading your book. This
Oh,
conversation, I think, was really helpful for me with, again, the complexity of everything that you're doing and the
yeah.
vastness of it, because there is so much out there into at least what was it, at least the points that were most impactful for me. I feel like we really were able to distill it down through
Good.
this conversation. So yeah, thank you
Good.
for you and your wisdom and your time
Thanks.
today. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.